Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So yes, my name is Nick Philippides, and I am a FBI special agent. I've been a special agent now for a little over 8 years, all of which right here in Sacramento, right down the street. And for the duration of that time, I have investigated exclusively cyber crimes. So cyber crimes can be a lot of different things. For most of that time, for about 5 or 6 years, I investigated specifically online crimes against children. So whenever there's an online predator or someone, a bad guy online who's trying to reach out and introduce themselves to minors, to kids, my job has always been to make sure to put a stop to that and to catch those that seek to do harm to children. For the past couple of years, I've been focusing on what's called the dark web or the deep web, which if we have time, I'm going to do my best to make up for some time, but I'm right now investigating those that are selling drugs, weapons, and ID theft related materials, so stolen credit card information online. I investigate those types of crimes now. So today, for the next 30 or 40 minutes, I want to talk about a lot of different types of cybercrime, but more importantly, I want to address your questions. So if you have a question about, at home we have a Wi-Fi and I'm not sure it's open right now, it doesn't need a password, is that okay, or should I put a password? I got an email from my bank and it wants me to log in, but it looks suspicious. Is that, what's the deal with that? I'm going to address a lot of those things, but if you have questions, please raise your hand as I go. We don't have to wait to the end. We'll make it a discussion, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. So to get started, I just want to say that the internet is a great thing, but it can be a tricky place, meaning there are a lot of scammers online, and they are trying to steal your money, steal information, steal data, or maybe even victimize children. Now today I'm going to focus primarily on a presentation for adults, meaning we're going to talk about personal security for bank accounts, spam, and the like. But I also go out into schools and do specific presentations for students, for kids, how they can keep themselves safe. Because now I go into a 3rd grade class and 95% of them have a smartphone. It's at 3rd grade, and it's actually getting younger than that even. And I bet if I asked you, show of hands, how many of you know really little kids that have cell phones? Go ahead, let me see. Well, I got some kids in the back that have cell phones, yeah. And that's a great thing. Again, I'm not against technology. I love it. I grew up with technology, but the problem is if it's used incorrectly, it can become a real problem. So there's a lot of opportunity for crime online because of how easy it is now to access it, and because of how smart cyber criminals can be. They are some of the smartest criminals out there. They're not your bumbling bank robber who knocks over the furniture in the bank when he's trying to take up $100 or something. These guys are very smart, very well educated, and they know computers very well. So it makes our job very challenging to go after them. So because it's a tricky place, I'm going to start by trying to trick you, okay? So I want you to take a look at the cards. I know it may be hard to see in the back, but I've got 6 playing cards up there on the board. And I want you to just pick one of them, and I want you to memorize it, okay? And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to read your mind. I'm going to try to figure out the card that you're looking at, and I'm going to remove it from the others. So on the next slide, your card will disappear, okay? But the other cards will come back. All right, did it work? It did. All right, now some of you are not fooled. Some of you know exactly how I just did that, right? I can see some heads. But some of you are probably like, okay, that was a little bit weird. Something doesn't seem right. I might have been swindled. Now, the way that this trick works, excuse me, it's a little hot. All right, I'll hold it down a little bit lower. Okay, the way that this trick works, I'll go back a slide. It relies on some basic human psychology. If I tell you to focus on one card, it's difficult for you to remember all of the other cards. Okay, let's...
You maybe not need that microphone? Don't jump up.
Okay, I can...
Is that okay for you?
Yeah, I can go without it. Okay. If you guys can hear me in the back? Yeah. All right, let's do that. That'll keep things simple.
Yeah, he's already got the mic for the camera.
Excellent. Good, we'll keep it simple. Wonderful. All right, I'll just use my outside voice. Okay, so when I tell you to think of a card, right, you focus on one, and you may not be able to remember more than one card. Well, all of the cards are in fact different. So it doesn't matter what you look at. I discard the entire deck, and I bring back completely new cards. They're similar, they kind of look the same, but they're all different. So why is this relevant for internet safety? Well, if I were to send this trick to 1 million people through a spam email, all I need to do is fool 1% of that population, and now I may be able to get them to buy into my investment scheme. I may trick them into thinking that I'm some sort of oracle that can predict the future. And that can be the basis for a lot of very advanced cyber crimes and fraud schemes. So I just wanted to illustrate that as soon as you remove the real world element to a crime, it starts becoming very tricky because people can pretend to be someone that they're not, and they can use some very advanced techniques to manipulate and to swindle you. So let's start with the basics, with our passwords. Now, I'm not going to ask you to tell me what your passwords are, but if you see your password on this list, you should change it, okay? That's the very first thing you should do. All right, so there is a list every year that gets released of the most common passwords. And you believe it or not, even though people know that they should have a tough password, they end up using something simple. And the reason is that, again, we're not very good at remembering very complex things. And so it's easier to have a simple password and not get locked out of your email than to have some crazy long password and every single time you want to log in, you have to do that whole forgot password and do all of that. So what I recommend is, and what I do is I use what's called a passphrase. So it actually doesn't matter if you have a uppercase, lowercase, mixes of fancy characters and numbers. That's important. But what's more important is how long the password is. So if you can, instead of thinking of a single word, think of a sentence that is something that you'll easily remember, that is 30 characters long, but it's a phrase, then use that and then put maybe a number or a single exclamation point or something at the beginning or the end of it. And that's going to be far more secure than, obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But even if you used an 8-character password that was completely random numbers and letters, that's still not as secure as a 20-character password that's all lowercase letters, okay? Any questions on passwords? Okay. Okay, now let's talk about cyber fraud. So if you're thinking about buying a new television and you want to get it for cheaper, you might look at eBay or go to Craigslist, right? And like anything, you have to use a little bit of common sense, because if a TV is costing $1,000 at Best Buy and Fry's, but then you see someone selling it for $100, brand new, there's probably something going on, right? If it's too good to be true, it probably is. And so really the only recommendation with these things is twofold. Number one is use common sense if you can. So if a deal seems too good, it probably is. The second is that a lot of these sites now provide, they have built-in liability insurance or fraud departments. You have to be careful though, because the criminals know this. So for example, let's say there's a TV that you want to buy on eBay, and right before the auction ends on eBay, you get a direct message from the seller. Instead of going through the eBay site itself, he sends you a link and says, hey, let's not worry about eBay, let's not get them involved. I'll sell you the TV directly and we'll save some money in the deal. That should be, warning signs should be going off in your head, okay? Anytime somebody wants to use a different channel of communication to sell you something, that's a problem sign. So if you use eBay proper, then if something happens, they will be able to refund you your money. And the last thing I'll say with cyber fraud is if you do, online shopping can be safe. Again, I'm not saying online shopping is not. But when in doubt, I would use a credit card versus a debit card for any purchase that you're not 100% sure. And the reason for that is it's much easier for you to get your money back if it was a credit card, because you never actually spent your money in the first place. The credit company will just waive the charge if it turns out to be fraud related. Any questions about online purchases or shopping? Yes?
Does PayPal make it safer?
It can, yes. So the question is, does PayPal, if you use PayPal as your third party to make the purchase, does it make it safer? Yes, so long as you're actually using the real PayPal. So that could be another problem, is that you may get an email saying, hey, it's been a while since you've logged into PayPal. We need to update your password. And you click on that email and you go to a site that looks just like PayPal, and you give them your username and what you thought your good password was. And the next thing you know, maybe you get an error on the page, or maybe it even forwards you to the real PayPal. And unbeknownst to you, you've now given your PayPal account information to a criminal. That's called a phishing scheme, and I actually have a slide that deals with it. But yes, using Google has a wallet now that sort of gives you some built-in fraud protection. There are a few other services out there. They all work essentially the same way, that if a problem occurs, then you could go to them and you can get your money back. Good question. So that kind of leads us to that, so spam. So anytime you get let me ask a silly question. How many of you have got an email that you didn't want? How many of you have been a victim of spam? Okay, probably thousands of times a day. Well, modern web-based email browsers have gotten a lot better. So spam overall has shrunk. It's getting better. One thing you might consider doing is having a couple different email accounts. I'm sure some of you already do this. So if you're going to sign up for a free service, use an account that if spam does go to it, it's okay. It's your dedicated spam email account. That way your personal account doesn't get flooded with offers and that sort of thing. Again, with spam, there's a million different varieties of spam. Just know that, again, if a deal seems too good to be true, it probably is. And know that reputable companies don't have to resort to sending you 200 emails a day to get you to click on something, okay? So if you're getting several emails from a company giving you this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, you should take pause for a second and verify that it's actually accurate. All right, another large problem that we see, I'm sure you've heard of, and I bet some of you have either experienced personally or know someone who has, is identity theft. Identity theft is the idea that someone takes personally identifying information about you, either it's your driver's license number, your social security number, something else, and they then take it and use it to open up other financial accounts or apply for passports, visas. It doesn't matter what it is. They basically try to use your good name to do something illegal. And then that way, if they ever get caught, it actually comes back on you. It looks like you were the one who did it, not them. It gives them a little bit of breathing room to go and commit crimes. I can tell you that even my information has been stolen, right? Because I'm a member of the federal government. We had a massive hack, OPM, and so everything about me is just kind of floating in the wind. So I'm a victim of it as well. And I think anyone who's been in federal service for the last, I forget the date of when the OPM hack goes back to, but on some level, it's because it's now a thing, we'll never be able to undo it, meaning identity theft will never go away. It's unfortunately now going to be a reality of day-to-day life. So what you can do is use things like credit monitoring. That is, you can call up any one of the credit bureaus or your financial institution, and if you think that you've been a victim of identity theft, you can put them on alert and let them know that I'm not going to be opening up any credit cards until I call you directly, so don't open credit in my name on anyone else's behalf. Credit monitoring. There is the FTC's website and IC3, which I will send out probably through Sean, or I don't have it up on the screen, but we'll give you a couple websites that you can report it to. But beyond that, if there is a ring of people committing identity theft crimes, the aggregate, and again, this is probably better for one of the lawyers to get into, but that threshold does apply maybe on an individual case-by-case basis, but often there are these rings of guys doing it where very quickly, when you add multiple victims together, you get into the realm where now it's definitely caught our attention. I don't know your specific circumstances, obviously, but it absolutely is a problem. And if you become a victim of identity theft, it's not because necessarily you did anything wrong. I didn't cause the OPM hack, right? It wasn't like I was careless and left something out for that to be stolen. So, but what I did do is we do credit monitoring, and I'm hyper vigilant on all my accounts to make sure that nothing seems out of the ordinary. So a couple things you can do to minimize yourself being a potential target. Number one is if you have any sensitive documents that you're throwing out, shred them before you do, because there are people that will dumpster dive and go through the trash to try to find important documents. So that's one thing. And then the second is phishing, which we're going to talk about. So I already kind of mentioned it, and I apologize. I know it's kind of hard to see what's going on the screen there. But that's just an example of what we talked about earlier, a fake PayPal email. So anytime you get an email, and I would say this goes across the board. Anytime you get an email from your bank, from PayPal, from any financial institution, instead of clicking on the link in the email, go to an internet browser, go directly to the website, and log in. Because the way financial institutions work is if you receive an email, you'll also have a message in your actual account that'll match whatever it is. So even when I know I'm expecting an email from PayPal, I still don't click on the link. I go directly to paypal.com, log in, and then I do my business there. So at the top there, instead of it saying chase.com, it actually says Chase Online, but then there's a dot, and then there's some other domain. And that's another telltale sign that if you have a link that is a phishing link, a suspicious link, it will not say paypal.com. You have to be careful, though, because it may say paypal.com somewhere else in the URL. So in this case, it starts Chase. I know you can't read it, but it says chaseonline1.hut2.ru. RU is a Russian-based website. That's another telltale sign. A lot of these phishing-type schemes come out of Eastern Europe. And so it looks just like Chase's actual site. They took all the HTML code. It's an identical copy. And the really good sites are so good that you put in your username and password, and when you click go, it sends them to the actual site, as well as a copy to some bad guy's cell phone. And then it'll forward you and log you into your actual Chase account so that you don't even see the difference. It looks like you're logging in. They get very, very tricky. But that's a good point. Verify the link at the top. So the green link will tell you that the site is secure. You kind of have to be careful, though, because there are still some ways that can be faked. And without getting into all the nitty-gritty of how that might work, generally speaking, if you can verify the URL and you see that green lock, then you know that you're good to go. Again, if you're ever not sure, the best thing to do is to just type in the site directly or go off a bookmark that you've already saved as opposed to clicking the link in the email. This one is still around where the King of Nigeria sends you an email. Have any of you received an email from the King of Nigeria? Okay. And they have $10 million they're just desperately trying to give you, but in order to get you the money, you have to first send them $800. And so this is still something we get calls daily into our office about people that have fallen for it. So again, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And anytime you're receiving a call where someone is trying to give you a large amount of money for no other reason than they have your number, be cautious of it. We work with the Internet Crime Complaint Center is a clearinghouse. It's ic3.gov. That's where we'll refer people when they get these sorts of attempted scams. And what they do is they pull in all of the leads from people who are receiving those types of solicitations. And then from there, based on what they can determine, they may they'll then send leads to those specific field offices or areas of the world. It's not always from Nigeria, right? So sometimes these scams come from here in the United States, and what ends up happening is a site like IC3 collects these tips from the public, and they start to form a pattern. And they see that, oh, this suburban area in Detroit, this IP address that comes back to Detroit has been sending out thousands of spam emails trying to get people to do this. So then they'll focus their attention on that area. There's a lot of research that goes into spam protection and prevention. Marking it spam, which will tell your personal email provider that next time this comes to just throw it away, that's fine. If it's something particularly bad, and what I mean by that is, like, let's say it starts messing up your computer. So you open the email, and next thing you know, you've got pop-ups, and it seems like there's a virus or something. You can go to ic3.gov and give details about that email, and that would be good. But for just general spam that you can just click past, mark it as spam, and you'll be okay. Let's talk about social engineering. I just want to touch on this. So this is, again, social engineering is not a specific crime. It's a way that a criminal can trick you. So people can be social engineered a lot of different ways. The most common way is, again, a cold call. Someone calls you on the phone. They say, hi, my name is Mr. Smith. I'm with Chase Financial Bank. I see here that your social security number is 123456778. That way, you think that they're verifying your identity. When in fact, it's very easy to, again, if you're a victim of identity theft, social security numbers are easily bought and sold online. Even though they're supposed to be secret, in many cases they're not. So they provide a little bit of information on the phone to trick you into believing that they're a legitimate source. And the next thing you know, they're asking, okay, well, now that I've given you your social, if you could verify your driver's license, your date of birth, and those 3 little numbers on the back of your credit card, if you could give those to me. Let's see, and the expiration date. Yeah, okay, good. So now what we need to tell you is that you owe us $300, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe they'll just hang up the phone. Who knows? But social engineering is very difficult to combat because, again, with a criminal who's very smart in this kind of technique, it can be very misleading and very subtle. So if you're not expecting a phone call, you should assume that it's not legitimate. Or Don't worry about being rude. Say, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but go ahead and give me your callback number or give me your public headquarters number and the extension I can reach you at. I often have to do that as an FBI agent. If I call somebody without meeting them in person, and I'm not offended when it happens, in fact, I actually am happy to hear it, they don't take my word that I'm an FBI agent over the phone. Instead, they say, look, you seem very nice, that's great, but give me your headquarters phone number, and so then I can call back the main FBI headquarters, and then they can patch you through. So again, anyone who's reputable and legitimate will not be offended if you say, give me a callback number with your main headquarters, and then look it up. Make sure that that phone number is, in fact, the public phone number for that company. There's now software-based voice over IP telecom software that will let you spoof the phone number that you're calling from. So yeah, it's not even enough now to trust caller ID, which again, you can see there's all these tricks and techniques. It makes it very difficult for a consumer to make sure that they're not being a victim of an attack. Very rarely will a company that's real call you out of nowhere. It happens occasionally, but usually they're gonna communicate nowadays through like an online message or something, through an email. But like, for example, the IRS tax fraud, one of the ways that it works is it says you owe a bunch of back taxes, and if you don't pay in the next 2 hours, myself, FBI agents are gonna come from your roof and they're gonna swing down and they're gonna arrest you. So the IRS doesn't do that. No legitimate call, IRS-based, will threaten that you pay the next day, otherwise you'll be arrested. So that's one way of looking at it. Again, with the banking, if you're not sure, which again, a very good criminal will make it very difficult to know for sure. So that's where you just say, I'll take your public phone number and I'll call you back. So his question was, should I be using a password on my Wi-Fi, or if I connect to a free Wi-Fi, can my computer be hacked? And the short answer is you should never be, well, two things. Number one, if you have home internet, you should put a password on it. You should put a specific type of encryption, which is WPA2. And if you don't know what that means, I'm sure your kids do, okay? And if they don't, someone in the neighborhood can help you. Everyone here knows somebody who's a geek like I am, right? And so have them help you set it up. Make it a password that is difficult, and it is okay to write the password down if that means that you guys will be able to have one. In other words, a lot of times people take the password off because they're so frustrated that they can't get their PS4 to connect as well as their iPad, so they just do away with the password altogether. It's much more important to actually get it done right, and then write the password down and leave it somewhere in a safe place in your house. There are the pictures here are of these really fancy, they're not that fancy, but they're very accurate antennas that are used for signal theft. So it's called war driving, where somebody could have one of these antennas connected to a computer and put it in their car and literally drive around a neighborhood and just jump on the open Wi-Fi in a 1 mile radius to do whatever it is that they want to do. And this is particularly bad because let's say that they are a scammer. So they're going to send phishing emails from an internet connection that happens to point back to your own personal home. So that when the FBI goes to do an investigation to figure out, okay, which IP address were these malicious emails coming from, we now, the internet service provider provides us some information, and it appears as though it's coming from someone's house, that they had nothing to do with it in the first place. Now, when if we got to the point, one of the things we check now is whether or not a house has open Wi-Fi, because we want to make sure that we have the right person. We don't want to wrongly accuse someone of something. So it's very, very important that you use a password. We actually have two and a half squads dedicated to just cyber crimes, just here in Sacramento. So we have one that deals with more national security type, spying and trade theft secrets. We also have a criminal cyber squad of which I'm associated with. And so we literally have about 15 to 20 agents just here in Sacramento that's their full-time job, is to go after people that are committing these types of crimes. So that's one thing. The second is that we have partnerships and ongoing outreach with financial institutions about how to address these types of issues, about security for people when it comes to devices and their homes. So it's at least a two-pronged approach. And then the third thing we do is community outreach. So I do talks all the time at all levels. Anyone who will listen to me talk for an hour, I'm there. So for kids, because a big vector for problems in a home can be a young person with essentially a computer. And if they're not advised on these same types of things, then now they could be the one to accidentally click something to allow a hacker access to your home internet. There are certain technologies that now that they've been discovered in techniques, so like chip and pin is one that now many credit cards will have a chip embedded in them to help prevent against that attack. But the other way that the problem has been addressed is to devalue the credit card itself, meaning the liability is taken off of the consumer. It is absorbed now by the credit card institution. We all end up paying for it with increased fees anyways, unfortunately, but now you never have to sit on the phone and fight the credit card company for saying that I didn't make that purchase. Instead, now the onus is on them to have to prove that you were the one who actually did it. Again, it just has become a part of life that at some point some of your data will be stolen. That's just, unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So instead, what can we do to be aware of it as soon as it happens and to have systems in place so that it doesn't break your bank, so that your hard-earned money doesn't actually go away?
So it's good to stay with LifeLock and all of these companies.
Well, so there are a lot of services out there, and they all do different things. Again, a lot of it's a personal choice. I don't personally have any of the with the OPM hack, there was some service provided, and I signed up for that. But I don't have any third-party thing. But again, it really depends on. It's a personal decision on whether or not to use a third-party program. I don't like when the browser saves my passwords because it's not the website that's saving the password, it's your local computer that's saving it. And so depending on the type of site, if it was a financial site, I would not, 10 minutes? Okay. If it was a financial site, I wouldn't have my web browser save the password. That's just a personal decision. Again, the only way that really can be used to hack you would be if someone had physical access to that computer, meaning someone has broken into wherever you live or your car, stolen it, and then has been able to get onto your computer. It is amazing how Fortune 500 companies haven't even gotten cybersecurity correct, or there's mistakes, and that's because it's very difficult. Cybersecurity is an ongoing, incredibly difficult thing. And so there have been a lot of high-profile hacks where in many cases, a lot of the right things were done, but then again, social engineering or some other flaw in that very complicated system happened. So I'd say if I had my own business, I would absolutely have some level of consideration with IT security. I think that would be a good idea. So the green lock it's a double-edged sword, but sometimes there are some legitimate sites that their security certificate has expired, and so that green lock actually won't be green. But that doesn't mean that it's been hacked. So again, first step would be to type in the URL for where you want to go directly yourself. Don't trust a link, because links can be manipulated to trick you. So if you type it in directly and you know that it's a site excuse me, that you go to all the time, like Chase, and you're getting a weird certificate. Now the Google Chrome browser and a lot of the new browsers are pretty good. They'll tell you why that lock is broken. If you hover over it, it'll say, everything looks good, this doesn't look like it's a phishing site, but their security certificate has expired and they haven't yet renewed it yet. And that happens time to time. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's been hacked. How do you teach people? Yeah. Okay, that is $1 million question. So her question is, for her parents, when they have a problem with their phone, they will often go to her to help her work through it, to fix it. And they don't understand that, virus doesn't necessarily mean the same thing on a phone as it does on a computer. And she's looking for an answer on how to properly explain to somebody who's not as tech savvy, maybe somebody who didn't grow up with the technology, how to do something. And again, there's an entire industry on how to teach people technology. So it's pretty tricky. I would say two things. Number one, it's repetition. So just explain to them a little bit at a time that, just get the basics down. For the longest time, my parents and grandparents didn't have an email address. And then, 5 years ago, they finally got an email address and it changed their world, right? And so it just takes them a little bit of time, but eventually they come around. And then there's also a lot of really good resources online for basic internet education. So that will give you just the basics you need, and you can Google them, and you can give those links to them, and they can watch a YouTube video that breaks it down and goes into those details. Good question. Let me hang on to that. How much time do I have? Are we up?
You got 5 minutes.
About 5 minutes? Okay, let me just quickly go through. I'm going to run out of time here. So let me just talk a little bit about social networking, and then I want to answer any more questions for the last 5 minutes. So let's talk about, okay, how many of you personally in this room have either a Twitter account, a Facebook, an Instagram, some sort of social networking site? You guys are on, what are you on, Instagram? All of them, everything. But you guys don't use Facebook though, right? You do? But it's mainly, okay, not Google+. All right, yeah, I threw that up there, that's a joke. Okay. So Periscope, how many of you, are you guys on Periscope? Okay, so this is what I'll say about social networking. It seems like every month there's a brand new app or a new site out there. They all do basically the same thing, okay? Some are focused on music, some are focused on live streaming, some are focused on 140 characters. It doesn't really matter, okay? They all connect people together, and they all can be used to share information. They're also all potential risks for a bad guy to steal your information, okay? So just be smart. Think before you post something, personal information, because as soon as you do, you lose control of it. Even if an hour later you're like, you know what, I probably shouldn't have taken a picture of myself in front of my school, like if you're a young kid or whatever, and you decide to try to undo that, delete it, take it down from your page, there's no guarantee that someone hasn't already come along and screen capped it and it's off to the races. How many of you guys use Snapchat, the kids in here, or adults? How many of you use Snapchat? Well, okay, those guys over there, okay. So do you guys think that when that picture disappears, it's actually gone? What do you think?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not, okay.
We've seen a bunch of articles, like Snapchat has all of them.
Yep. So for those of you who don't know what Snapchat is, it's basically a way you can send pictures or videos to your friends, and it has this feature where once you watch the video or the picture, it vanishes, it disappears, it self-destructs after that viewing. Well, now I think kids are educated enough to know that that's not really the case, okay? There's, at a minimum, there's like 3 copies of it alone. There's the one on the person who took the picture, there's another copy on the person who received it, and then probably Snapchat servers, and then ISPs, and a bunch of other stuff. So just keep that in mind, that the only way to make sure that that information doesn't get into the wrong hands is to never post it in the first place. So think before you're posting. All right, in summary, and then I know we only have a couple minutes left. I'll answer as many questions as we have until we got to wrap it up. In summary, passwords, keep them long and strong, and change them often if you can. Again, I would argue that it is more important to have a password that you have to write down to remember than an easy password that you can remember. And the idea there is, if somebody breaks into your home, opens a drawer, finds that password, then you've got other issues that you're going to deal with as well. You may not worry about, oh, my Facebook account was hacked or whatever. So keep it in a place hidden in your house that you feel safe about, but use a difficult password. Don't use one that can be easily guessed. We kind of glossed over the virus scan thing, but make sure your operating system is up to date. You'll often get those annoying little pop-ups in the bottom that say Windows wants to update, you have new updates. Do those. Even though they're annoying, I know they are, it's important to do them because they will patch potential holes in your computer and protect. But you have to be very careful. There are viruses that are designed to look like antivirus, okay? That's how difficult it has become in today's state of cybersecurity. So this here, it says Windows 7 Antivirus 2012. That is in fact malware. That is a virus. It gives you all these alerts. It says, click me, click me. You think you're doing the right thing, and you're in fact installing a virus. So again, if you're ever not sure, have somebody help you who knows this stuff, or go to Google, type in the name of the program exactly, and see what other people have said about it. And almost always you'll find that there's an article that says, be careful of this program. If you're getting these pop-ups, that's a good sign that you have a virus. I think 99% of computers get a virus at some point. So what I recommend for antivirus, depending on, it sort of depends. There's free versions out there. You do not have to pay $100 a year for antivirus. Microsoft Security Essentials, if you have a Windows-based computer, is free, and it's pretty good. AVG, Avast, again, I'm not for or against anyone, but what's important is that you have an antivirus, and that it's running, and that it's set to real-time protection. Because that way, if you do inadvertently download something, it'll catch it.
What is the Microsoft?
It's called Microsoft Security Essentials. It's also known as Windows Defender. So some of you may know it by that name. Okay, let me go back to my summary. Yeah, again, internet scams are usually well documented. So if you get an email, it seems too good to be true, take even a little bit of that email, go to Google, search for it, and odds are that someone else has already experienced that email and has talked about how it's a scam. Definitely put a password on your home Wi-Fi, and you want to use WPA2 and not WEP. Again, if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. Go to the person who does know what it means and have them do it for you. And finally, parents need to be involved in a child's online life. That's an entire discussion unto itself, which I do for parents and teachers, and I go into schools and talk about online safety as it pertains to children. But just be mindful that when you give your kid a phone, sorry kids in here, you're not going to like what I'm about to say, but if you give them a phone, you're giving them a computer. So if you have rules for your home computer, those rules need to also apply to phones and iPads and stuff, because nowadays, almost everything you can do on a laptop, you can do on a phone. That's just the way it is. Okay. We got 5 minutes for questions.
Can you answer the John's question? The first question was about the Starbucks.
Yeah, so specifically for open Wi-Fi, I would never do any sensitive banking. I would never do anything that I wouldn't be okay with handing to a stranger. I'm not saying I don't get on open Wi-Fi, but I would do it just to check sports, to check the news, general things. I wouldn't do it. There are ways that you can safely use open Wi-Fi through a VPN or some other means. But again, if you're a typical user and you're not familiar with those techniques, open Wi-Fi is not safe. In fact, I go to conferences where they do demonstrations about cybersecurity, and there's something called, there's a lot of them, but one's called Firesheep. And what it is it's a program where if I'm a bad guy, I open up the screen and I'm on Starbucks Wi-Fi, I can literally see the screen of somebody else that's on the same network as me. And everything they do, I'm just seeing mirrored on my screen, and including any passwords that they use to enter into their financial banks or anything like that. So use it for recreational stuff, but if it's sensitive, financial, stay away from public Wi-Fi. Yes, ma'am.
How about the security of your mobile data connection?
Your mobile data connection. Oh, so if you have your own hotspot or you're tethering from your...
Like if you're on your phone and you're just using the data.
Yeah, so that is far better than using open Wi-Fi. Yeah, that's a lot more secure to use your own. So the question was, what about if I want to use my own data connection on my cell phone to log into my bank? I do that regularly with my own phone. Nothing's 100%, but it's definitely the better alternative than to hopping onto the open Wi-Fi at Starbucks or Panera or at the airport or wherever. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Are there any advantage to have a static IP address versus dynamic?
For again, we're talking about business or at home?
Either or.
So static versus dynamic IP addresses come into play. If you're a business, there are advantages for having a static IP address, because a lot of times, a lot of the back-end network infrastructure depends on routing tables, and you want to be pointing to a common public IP address. For a home, again, unless you have a very limited specific need for a static IP address, then a dynamic is fine. And you'll end up, usually, as you probably know, you pay more for a static IP address. And again, the reasons for that are very slim. There's only a few instances where you really need to worry about that. But a dynamic would be just fine.
If the static IP address stops working, what does it mean?
If it stops working, well, it would be no different than if a dynamic IP address stops working. So basically, that would mean that there's a problem with your internet service provider, or that there's something.
They say there's no problem.
Well, okay, so that may be a whole other issue then. So if it stops working, it may be a router issue. It's probably not dependent on the fact that it's static versus dynamic. It's some other issue. You're an adult. You do what you want with Facebook. I'm just saying that the data that you put on there, just assume that more than just your friends can see. And I don't mean because of hackers, but because there are so many privacy settings in Facebook now, you may not fully know what is visible to other people. And some privacy settings have something called friends of friends. So you think that your cell phone number is just visible to the 50 people that you know in your network, but you may accidentally have it to friends of friends. Well, if you do the math, that network is exponential. And very quickly, you're now not sharing it with 50 people, you're sharing it with 1,000, 1,500 people. So just be cognizant, and it's really a personal decision. So again, Facebook will suggest and recommend people that you don't, with no intervention on your part, you will see friend requests and the like, right? So Facebook, their whole marketing scheme is they want to add as many people to your network as possible because that's how they make money. So you will see on your profile other people show up. And you should have the opportunity to deny and reject those people. If we're talking about the actual legitimate Facebook site and not a phishing or a malformed site. But the legitimate Facebook site will give you the opportunity to deny friend requests or to ignore those people you might know on your profile. There's nothing preventing somebody from creating a fake profile either, right? So when you sign up for Facebook, there's no identification check. So it is possible, and there are instances of it where, for different reasons, a page can be created in someone's name, or you share a name where someone else puts information. So that would be the only other thing I could think of. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.